What's up, humans? It is Wednesday. We are moving on to the next part of our grade chart, which would be the A. So we're looking at achievements today. If you don't already, get out or pull up that notes paper from that we've been working this week. You should have the R and the G filled in, so you should have religion and geography filled in. And today, since we are talking about achievements, we are going to look at what this thing is. Little spoiler, it is a language. It is some writing. And I'll tell you what it is telling us here shortly. But first things we are going to look at is achievements of Mesopotamia. So looking at some of the things that these people invented and how they are still important 4,000 years later. So, objective is here, your daily question, which you should have already seen. It's also here. So, most of us at this point know that reading or what you're looking at letters on their own don't really tell you much, but you put them together and they make something that we all kind of understand. Like you understand what the words in this little PowerPoint slide here mean. You understand, you can read them and understand what they're saying. Even though I'm not directly speaking them to you, you know what they're saying. The idea of a written language, so taking like our words and putting them on paper, was something that was developed by the ancient Sumerians, those people we talked about yesterday who developed the first civilizations in Mesopotamia. They also had a hand in developing the first writing system. And it was known as cuneiform. So this picture on the right here, this fine piece of stone, is actually an official document that tells us a story. It is their way of writing down what happened. You're probably looking at it going, there ain't no way that this tells a story. It looks like a bunch of random shapes, letters, triangles, that kind of thing. And you'd be right. It is a series of triangle wedge shapes pushed into a clay tablet. So the idea is that these impressions tell what happened. So they would take whatever they were trying to say, they would make the imprint on a clay tablet like this one, and then they would carve in the symbols to represent what they were trying to say. Only scribes, so scribes are people who would be the official kind of writers of the society, would write down what was being said on these clay tablets using these symbols, and it would be understood that these symbols mean this, these symbols mean that, and put them together, and you get a story of what happened. So these cuneiform tablets covered everything from laws, so like what you could and couldn't do, the punishments if you broke said laws. They covered trade, so a lot of these deal with farmers trading wheat for goats or whatever. And then they also help determine the quantity of things. So I gave Mr. Lewis 20 things of wheat for his 2 goats. That kind of thing. So the idea was that it made it easier to keep track of things. And the big thing with these is once this tablet dried, couldn't change it. So it was permanent once the tablet dried. So their big claim to fame is writing. And they also did a few other things as well. They also took this writing system, the cuneiform, and they developed stories. One of the most famous of these stories, and this is something we'll look at again next week, is known as the Epic of Gilgamesh. So prior to this, a lot of the stories that you might have heard if you were an ancient Mesopotamian were told like person to person. Like I tell you this story, you tell your friend this story. You ever played? It's kind of like the game Telephone. If you ever played that, where like it starts at one end, makes its way down. By the end, the story is completely different than what was being said before. That's the problem with not being able to write these down. But once they developed the cuneiform, they were able to write these stories, or as they called them, epics, down. So we believe that the Epic of Gilgamesh is the oldest written story in the world that we currently know of. It's about a king named Gilgamesh, who went on a journey to find the answers to some of life's biggest questions, such as why people die, what the meaning of life was, those big brain-blowing questions. So stories about him going along, figuring out all of those, or trying to figure out all of those things. So for these two slides, what I would have written down is what cuneiform is and what a scribe is, as well as what an epic is. And you can always pause the video and go back and make sure you get those written down if you need it. But they also developed some other things that I bet you use on most of them you use on a daily basis, and you probably don't even think about it. So I know this question, people ask this question, like, why do I care? Why do you care about something that happened way back 3,000-4,000 years ago? You ever used anything that had wheels? You ever had to dig up ground to plant something? Do you know what a sewer system is? Have you recently taken any medicine? Do you ever use a calendar, whether it's a physical calendar, which I don't have in front of me, or a digital calendar on your phone? Have you ever tried to use the number 60 in math? If your answer to any of those is yes, you might want to thank the Mesopotamians here, because we can trace the invention of the wheel, the calendar, and a plow, and among other things, all the way back to these Mesopotamian peoples, the Sumerians, and so on. So odds are, if you've been in a car recently, you can thank the Mesopotamians. If you've used a calendar recently to keep track of your life, thank the Mesopotamians. If you've taken any medicine, you can thank the Mesopotamians for kind of developing the process of finding new medicines. So they developed all these different items that we use in some form on a daily basis, and we probably don't even think about. So a lot of what we use today can be traced back to Mesopotamians. Now, so before we go, what I would use right down here is invention of the wheel, calendar, and plow. So that's what I would put in your notes box for this one, and we'll go back over it again probably sometime next week and just kind of recap everything we've done this week. So if you missed something, don't worry about it. You can go back and pause the video right then, or you can hold off until next week when we kind of do a recap over some of this, because I know there's a lot going on here. But the thing behind me, so this, it is actually a close-up picture of this guy right here. You're, again, probably looking at me like, huh? Okay. So the idea behind this is simple. Have you ever seen a news story where someone apparently broke a law, and you didn't even know that law existed, yet alone what the punishment was for it? Like, you had no idea that thing was illegal and that you could be punished for it. If you really wanted to know more about it, today you can always look up the law on the internet, find it, and find out, okay, here's why it's illegal, here's what the punishment is for it. back then, that wasn't a thing, obviously. So you had to rely on just people knowing what the law was and remembering what the punishments were for that. So eventually, once they developed the cuneiform writing, the idea was thought of like, why don't we just write these down and then put them in public places where people can see them, and we'll be able to reference like, okay, that is illegal because it's on the law book. So this is actually one of those law codes that was written down and put in a public place by a man named Hammurabi. He was a king of Babylon, and we'll talk about what Babylon is next week. But he got the idea as king that he wanted everyone to know what the laws were. So he ordered his scribes, those people, to write things down and create these steles, as they're called. And okay, sorry about that. I thought somebody was at my door. But Hammurabi ordered that his laws be written down on these stone clay tablets and put in like town squares, city centers, so that ordinary people could look at these and go, oh, okay, so this is illegal. And if I do break these rules and get caught, here is what could happen. And we'll talk more about this next week because some of the things that are written on here are kind of mind-blowing. So some of the stuff is like, some of these laws have created phrases that I'm almost positive you've heard before and just never realized where they came from. But for now, all you need to worry about is like this law code from Hammurabi is known for its detail, not only in what was illegal, but also the punishment for breaking those laws. So it's a little bit of a spoiler. If you ever heard the saying, an eye for an eye, comes from this. And I'll explain how and all that stuff next week. So stay tuned. But for now, that is actually all that I have for you today. On the next slide, or on the next page of the module, I want you to, you'll see a link here. You'll read this page here and page 5, I believe. Yes. So you will be reading pages 1 and 5 on Discovery Ed, and then you will be doing the assignment for today. As always, if you guys have questions, let me know. I know we're kind of winding down for some of you on the e-learning. So if you need me to help to go back over stuff that you've missed to kind of catch up, let me know. I'm more than happy to help y'all, but I need to know that you need help. So if you don't have any other questions, I will end this video and see you all hopefully sometime soon.